I grew up in a town that doesn't show up on most maps. Baird, Texas, population 2,000, give or take. If you drive through on your way to Abilene, you'll miss it in under a minute. A few gas stations, a diner, a handful of half-empty houses, and a stretch of land that everyone pretends isn't haunted. We didn't have much, but we had the crossing. The old railway cut straight through the edge of town, long before any of us were born. The tracks were pulled up sometime in the late 1970s after a derailment that killed 12 people, or 14, depending on who you ask. They paved over most of it, let the weeds grow high, and eventually people stopped thinking about trains at all, until they started hearing them again. I was 16 the first time I heard it. It was a hot August evening, the kind where the air sticks to your skin and everything feels heavy and slow. My friend Caleb and I were sitting in his pickup near the edge of the old crossing, drinking warm Cokes and trying to catch a bit of signal on his phone. That's when we heard it. At first it sounded like wind, distant, low, humming through the trees. Then the vibration started. The cans in the truck bed rattled, and the ground beneath us gave a faint shiver. "Is that thunder?" Caleb asked. But it wasn't thunder. It was the metallic rumble of wheels on track. Faint but rising, steady, rhythmic. The sound of an oncoming train. We stared at each other, both of us frozen, because we knew what that sound meant and what it shouldn't mean. There hadn't been a train through Baird in 40 years. The rumble grew louder, closer, and then the light appeared. A bright, blinding beam cutting through the darkness at the far end of the road. It was low like a headlamp, and it moved slowly, steadily, down the line that wasn't there anymore. Caleb's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, frowned. No service. I checked mine too. Nothing. No bars. No Wi-Fi. Even the clock froze at 11:43 p.m. My dad always told me that animals know when something isn't right. The crickets had stopped. The wind had stopped. It was so quiet that I could hear my own pulse thudding in my ears. The light kept coming, brighter now, so white it turned the trees silver. Caleb threw the truck into reverse. The engine sputtered, coughed, and died. We sat there, watching, breath held, as the light rolled past us. No train, no tracks, just light. It swept through the cab of the truck, washing everything in cold, humming brightness, and then, just as suddenly, it was gone. The night snapped back. Crickets chirped again. The air moved. The truck started on the first turn of the key. Caleb didn't speak for a long time. When he finally did, his voice was barely a whisper. "Did you see who was inside?" I thought he was joking, but the look on his face said he wasn't. "There was someone in the window," he said. "A man, just standing there, watching." We told people, of course. Everyone in Baird's got a story about the crossing, and they all end the same way, with laughter, disbelief, and someone saying, "That's just the wind in the canyon." But that night, I couldn't sleep. My compass, the one I used for hunting trips, was sitting on my nightstand. When I looked at it around midnight, the needle was spinning in slow, steady circles. North to south, south to north, over and over. The next morning, I went back to the crossing alone. The grass was burned in two perfect parallel lines stretching as far as I could see, and in the dirt between them, the faint imprint of a boot. For 3 nights, I couldn't stop hearing it. That low, metallic hum buried somewhere deep in my ears, like the sound had followed me home from the crossing. I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that light again. The one that cut through the darkness, the one that shouldn't have been there. And somewhere inside it, someone standing at the window. Caleb refused to talk about it. He'd crossed the street when he saw me the next day. Said his dad told him the crossing's off limits. But I could tell it wasn't his dad he was scared of. It was the sound. When I asked him what he'd seen, he just shook his head. "I don't want to talk about it, man. Just leave it alone." Then he got in his truck and drove off without another word. He never came back to school that week. Couldn't let it go. So I went digging the town library, old newspaper archives, anything. And sure enough, there it was. The Baird Tribune, August 14th, 1977. Midnight train derails outside town. 12 dead, 1 missing. According to the article, the engineer had stayed at the controls until the very end, trying to slow the train before it left the tracks. They found the locomotive split open like a tin can. The only body missing was the engineer's, Henry Alcott. They said he was last seen standing in the cabin window, one hand on the throttle, eyes fixed forward. Witnesses claimed he didn't even flinch before the crash. They buried what was left of the passengers in a shared grave at the edge of town. But no one ever found him. I told myself I wasn't going back. But that's the thing about curiosity, it doesn't care about fear. It feeds on it. So the next night, I parked at the edge of the crossing again, killed the engine and waited. The wind had died down. Even the cicadas were quiet. The only sound was my own heartbeat. At exactly 11:43 p.m., the air changed. It started with a vibration, faint, almost like thunder underground. Then the rumble built, deep and rhythmic, echoing through the earth beneath the tires. I stepped out of the truck, flashlight in hand. The beam flickered as the light appeared, distant at first, then swelling brighter, closer, until the entire road glowed white. And this time I saw it clearly. The train, not solid, more like a shadow made of light. The cars flickered in and out, the metal edges melting into mist. And in the front, the locomotive, black against the glow, its headlight blinding. The whistle cut through the air, a single long cry that froze the world around me. Through the glare, I saw movement in the engine cabin, a figure standing at the controls. The engineer. He turned, and for a split second, I thought it was just reflection, light playing tricks on my mind. But then my heart stopped. The man in the window wasn't a stranger. It was me. Same face, same jacket, same wide, terrified eyes staring back. And his mouth moved. The light swallowed everything. The ground shook hard enough to rattle my teeth. Then, as quickly as it came, it was gone. The crossing was empty again. No light, no sound, just the smell of hot metal and dirt. I ran back to the truck, gasping for air, hands shaking so hard I could barely grab the keys. The dashboard lights blinked to life, and my phone screen lit up by itself. No signal, no caller ID, just one message. Engineer returned to cabin. The phone froze. The clock read 11:43 and stayed there. Even when I turned the ignition, even when I drove halfway back to town, it didn't change. By the time I got home, the compass on my dashboard was spinning again, north to south, south to north, over and over. And for the first time since that night, I understood what the sound really was. It wasn't the train moving. It was the ground remembering. I didn't tell anyone about what I saw that night. What could I even say? That I'd seen myself driving a train that doesn't exist? That the air hums like a dying wire every night at 11:43? People in Baird don't ask questions they don't want answers to. But after that night, I started noticing small changes. At first, they were easy to ignore. A shift in my reflection, a sound that didn't stop when it should have, a flicker of movement in a window when no one was behind it. Then they got worse. It started with the phone. Every time I picked up to call someone, there'd be a delay, 3 seconds of silence before the dial tone. Then, one night, I heard a faint sound behind the static. Not words, not at first, just rhythm. The steady clack-clack, clack-clack of steel wheels on track. I hung up, waited, picked the phone up again. Nothing. But when I held the receiver to my ear, I could hear breathing, and then a whisper, my own voice. "You're running late." I dropped the phone. I needed answers. So I drove back to the Historical Society the next morning. Mr. Harris, the old caretaker, wasn't there. His assistant, a quiet woman named Deborah, said he hadn't shown up for work in 3 days. She let me look through the old transportation files. Stacks of brittle papers, yellowed photos, brittle carbon copies of accident reports. Then I found it, the list of victims from the 1977 derailment. 12 names, all typed neatly except one. At the bottom of the page, next to the word engineer, someone had written in pen, Henry Alcott, recovered August 14, 2023. That's this year. I rubbed my eyes, thinking maybe it was a misprint. But then I saw the small note scribbled beside it in a different handwriting. Identity confirmed via driver's license, M. Bennett. My name. I dropped the folder and stumbled back. Deborah looked up from her desk. You okay, Han? I didn't answer. I just left. That night, I locked every door, turned off every light, and sat on the floor with my back against the wall. I told myself it was a mistake, a typo, someone mixing up files. At 11:42, the hum started again. Came from the walls, low, steady, mechanical. My phone flickered to life, screen dim but glowing. No notifications, just the time, 11:43 p.m. Then the air pressure dropped. The apartment creaked, the floorboards trembled. Outside, through the thin curtains, the horizon glowed white, that same pale beam stretching across the fields, cutting through the dark like a wound. And this time I heard the whistle, long and low, echoing like thunder underwater. I told myself not to move. Don't look. Don't open the window. But curiosity kills faster than fear. I peeled the curtain back just enough to see. The crossing was lit again, though the tracks were buried in weeds. And on the far end of the road, where the fog hung thick and silver, the train was there, slowly rolling past. Through the fogged glass of the cabin, I could see him again. The engineer. Me. Only this time, he wasn't just watching. He was waving me forward. I stepped back. My breath hitched. The apartment lights flickered once, twice, and then every bulb went black. In the reflection of the window, I saw the faint outline of the train behind me. The cars stretching down the hall like a tunnel that didn't belong. I blinked. Gone. But the sound remained. A low, distant hum that vibrated in the floor beneath my feet, like something huge was moving beneath the town itself. The next morning, my front door was unlocked, and on the welcome mat sat an old, dust-covered envelope. Inside was a single sheet of yellowed paper, a train ticket, stamped with the date August 12, 1977, and below it, printed faintly in red ink, passenger M. Bennett, confirmed. The back of the ticket had writing in faded pencil. The schedule never changes. The crossing's at 11:43. Don't be late again. I burned the ticket in the sink, watched the paper curl, the ink turn to ash. But when I went to bed that night, the faint smell of coal and iron still hung in the air. And at 11:43, somewhere in the distance, the whistle blew. The night I decided to go back, I didn't bring a flashlight, didn't tell anyone, didn't even pack a bag. Just the ticket. That same damn ticket that had shown up in my mailbox 2 weeks ago. It had no return address, no stamp. Just my name, printed in bold black type. One passenger, bared line. And at the bottom, in faded red ink, departure, 11:43 p.m. When I reached the old crossing, the air was already heavy with fog. The signal post, rusted, half collapsed, started to tick, slow and mechanical, like something waking from a long sleep. And then came the sound, the distant hum of steel on steel. The light appeared far down the invisible line, growing brighter by the second. And for the first time, I didn't run. I just stood there and waited. The rails, buried beneath weeds, began to glow faintly, two burning lines stretching into the dark. When the train emerged from the fog, it was silent. No smoke, no screeching brakes, just motion. A black engine polished like a mirror. The front read only one word, painted in white block letters, Baird. It stopped inches from my boots. The door slid open with a hiss. Inside, The air was cold, damp, metallic, but not rotten. Dim yellow lights flickered overhead. The aisle was lined with passengers. At first glance, they looked asleep, heads tilted, eyes closed. But as I walked past, I realized they weren't breathing. And yet they were familiar, faces from town, people I'd seen in the diner, at the gas station, on the sidewalk. Every one of them sitting perfectly still, hands folded over their laps, each one holding a ticket. And each ticket had the same departure time, 11:43 p.m. At the far end of the car, the door opened. A man stepped through, tall, lean, wearing a conductor's uniform from another century. His badge was blank. His eyes were not. "You're late," he said. I swallowed hard. I didn't think it was real. He smiled. "No one does. Not until the last stop." He gestured toward an empty seat near the window. I sat. My hands were trembling. Outside, the world was moving, or maybe the train wasn't moving at all and everything else was being pulled past it. Fog, power lines, old barns, all sliding backward into black. As I leaned toward the glass, I noticed something strange. The reflection wasn't mine. It looked like me, but older. Eyes hollow, skin pale, lips barely moving. And then it spoke, my reflection, without sound. Its mouth formed words I couldn't hear, until the window fogged up from the inside, and the words appeared there, traced by an unseen hand. "Conductor needed." The train slowed. Outside, I saw the crossing again, the same one near Baird. But everything was different. The diner was gone. The power lines were gone. Even the trees looked younger. It was Baird, but not from now. From before. I stood up, heart hammering, and turned toward the conductor. But he wasn't there. Only his hat sat on the seat beside me, and next to it a ledger, black leather, unmarked. I flipped it open. The pages were filled with names, written in perfect handwriting. Caleb, Porter, dozens more. And at the very bottom, conductor, vacancy filled. The train lurched forward again. I stumbled toward the door, but the handle wouldn't move. Outside, the crossing lights began to flash, red, bright, endless. And then, through the window, I saw them. People, standing by the tracks, filming, holding up their phones, recording the ghost train of Baird. And in every video, I could see myself. Face pressed to the glass, hand against the window, eyes pleading for them to see me. But they never did. They just watched the light fade into fog and laughed about how real it looked. Epilogue. The Baird crossing is still there. Locals say if you stand by it long enough, you'll feel the ground shake around 11:43 p.m. Sometimes, people swear they see faces in the fogged glass of the engine car. Sometimes, if you listen closely, you can hear a voice on the wind. A calm, tired voice, calling names, one by one. And when it says yours, the ticket arrives the next day. Stamped, paid in full. Departure, 11:43 p.m.